I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel stands in solidarity with Egypt. For the first time ever, a Jewish woman may become the next Miss Germany. And a new discovery has just revealed that throughout history, dogs in Israel have been a lot more than just man's best friend. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Israel is sending its deepest sympathies to Egypt, which is still reeling from the deadliest terror attack to have ever been committed on Egyptian soil. This weekend, over 300 innocent people were murdered in cold blood while praying in a mosque in the Sinai Peninsula, and at least 128 others have been injured.
على هذا الحادث الأليم الغادر الخسيس الجبان اللي كان بيهدف إنه يحطم معنوياتنا، بيهدف إلى تدمير صلابتنا، بيهدف إلى التشكيك في قدرتنا. هذا الحادث، هذا العمل الإرهابي الآثم يزيدنا صلابة ويزيدنا قوة ويزيدنا إرادة في إن احنا نقف ونتصدى ونكافح ونحارب الإرهاب.
The Islamic State is believed to be behind this horrific attack, which is shocking not just because of the staggering death toll, but because they targeted an Islamic place of worship. Survivors are recalling with horror how dozens of ISIS fighters surrounded the mosque while prayer was in session, and then launched their ruthless assault using both explosives and gunfire. If ISIS is behind the attack, as many suspect, it would reflect a disturbing new chapter in the terror group's overall strategy that would indeed seem to be the case, given the fact that the Islamic State has been all but wiped out in Syria. Israeli lawmakers across the aisle are condemning the cowardly act of terror as pure evil. And in Tel Aviv, the City Hall building has been illuminated with the Egyptian flag as a show of support for the victims.
בשם כל אזרחי ישראל אנחנו שולחים תנחומים לממשלת מצרים, לאזרחי מצרים, על הרצח ההמוני הנפשע של אזרחים בזמן תפילה. הטרור של האסלאם הקיצוני אינו מבחין בין דתות, בין אנשים, בין עמים, ואני חושב שהדבר המתבקש הוא שכל מדינות העולם יתאחדו להילחם בו בכל מקום, לרבות בסיני.
Although Egypt has launched a counterattack, this deadly and tragic event throws the security situation in the Sinai into a complete crisis. The Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza was actually set to open just yesterday, but now Egyptian officials must keep it closed until things return to normal. A Lebanese comedian and actor has just been arrested in his home country and is accused of being a spy for Israel. Talk about a triple threat. This comes at a time when tensions are mounting on Israel's northern border with Lebanon and Syria. The head of the UN has even just warned that a fresh conflict between Israel and Hezbollah may be on the horizon. Now, ILTV's Aaron Porce is here with more on the story. Aaron, how are these stories related?
Quite possibly, very much so, actually. With everything that's been going on lately, with Prime Minister Hariri resigning and then returning, with Hezbollah saying, Nasrallah coming out and saying, prepare for skirmishes with Israel on the border, with Iran encroaching and building outposts within 40 kilometers only of our northern border, there have been many who are talking of war, as you just mentioned. So to add this, the fact that there's some deep cover Israeli agent working in Lebanon for years is, the straw that broke the camel back. It's that butterfly that lands on the car, like in the cartoon.
Well, so what information did this comedian supposedly supply anyhow?
Well, actually, I'll get into all those details right now in my report.
Ziad Itani has been arrested by Lebanese police on suspicion of spying for Israel, apparently for years now. Arabic media is reporting that Itani has confessed his entire story to the police, which details how an Israeli officer recruited him through Facebook by posing as a beautiful Swedish woman, eventually developing a close relationship over the internet. Itani apparently knew he was being recruited by Israel at some point, because soon they developed daily check-ins using encrypted messages and code words. Police believe he was directed to use his celebrity status to gain information on top Lebanese officials and even create a group of liberal politicians to push public opinion towards friendship with Israel. That would certainly be an interesting objective, considering the head of the UN has just warned that current Israeli-Hezbollah tensions could erupt into war. Meanwhile, on the Syrian front, we're hearing Israel has promised to destroy any Iranian presence in Syria that comes within 40 kilometers of the Israeli border. That's a promise that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad may truly listen to. Word is that he's agreed to keep Iran from the border on the condition Israel doesn't work to remove his presidency.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is defending himself and his fellow cabinet members after the publisher of a left-wing newspaper tweeted that they were, quote, murderers in suits. Netanyahu has condemned those words, offering this rebuttal.
לכל המטיפים לנו, חגיגת הצביעות שלכם, המוסר הכפול שלכם מתגלה, פשוט זועק לשמיים. ולכן אני אומר לכל המטיפים לנו, אל תטיפו לנו.
Haaretz publisher Amos Shokin made the initial tweet in response to the Israeli government's controversial policy of deporting asylum seekers from Africa to Rwanda. For most Western countries, deportations to third-party countries are strictly outlawed because many worry that doing so puts asylum seekers' lives in immediate danger. This is what Shokin's newspaper and human rights groups all over the world are arguing. The Israeli government, however, says it's a necessary step in the best interest of the country and remains committed to moving ahead with the plan no matter what. An ultra-Orthodox Knesset member has just stunned the country by suddenly resigning from his cabinet post as Israel's health minister. The reason why? Well, to protest the government policy of allowing train construction during the Holy Shabbat holiday. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with the details. Now, Brett, what exactly happened here?
Well, for about a year now, Israeli railways have been using the Shabbat weekend to do required maintenance on their train lines all over the country. Now, obviously, work like this completely freezes up traffic because the trains can't run, which is why the government greenlit construction to take place over the weekend. Of course, this policy doesn't sit too well with the ultra-Orthodox members of the Knesset, who argue that allowing labor on Shabbat kind of desecrates the Holy Sabbath.
Right, well, it looks like the last straw has finally broken the camel's back, but now that a minister's actually resigned, how will this impact the government?
Well, for the time being, it looks like Netanyahu's coalition will probably be intact. I mean, this minister we're talking about, his name is Yaakov Litzman. He comes from the Ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism Party, and now that party has 6 seats in the Knesset, which makes them critical to forming Netanyahu's right-wing government. Now, even though Litzman has given up his post, the party says they're committed to staying in the current coalition, and Netanyahu himself has actually stepped in to run the health ministry in Litzman's place. And I've got the rest of the details in my report.
הגשתי מכתב התפטרות לראש הממשלה ולמזכיר הממשלה בעקבות עבודות חילולי שבת ברכבת ישראל אתמול וגם התקופה האחרונה.
Litzman's sudden resignation has been a long time coming, but is a shocking development nonetheless. His ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism Party has been contending with the government for nearly a year now, trying to shut down Israel Railways' Shabbat construction. There have been some compromises reached in the past, though. For a time, the state actually used non-Jewish workers to carry out the job in accordance with ultra-Orthodox religious law, an option that's off the table now given specific employees with special skills are required to keep things on track. That's why Israel's welfare minister has decided all work on the railways would be approved for the weekend, saying the country must, quote, ensure the safety of rail traffic, which if not done in time, could endanger lives. But clearly, Litzman has had enough. Railway work went as planned over the weekend, prompting Litzman to resign from his post and condemn what he calls, quote, state-sponsored public desecration of Shabbat. Prime Minister Netanyahu will now oversee the health ministry in his absence.
הממשלה הלאומית בראשות הליכוד היא הממשלה הטובה ביותר למדינת ישראל. אני חושב שכל חברי הקואליציה מעוניינים בהמשך קיומה. אני לא חושב, אני יודע. השבת חשובה לנו, וגם הצרכים של כלל אזרחי ישראל, ובתוכם כמובן הצורך של תחבורה בטוחה ורצופה. אני מאמין שאנחנו נמצא פתרון מושכל לזה, אנחנו עובדים על זה, ובהישג יד, ואנחנו נפעל כדי שנוכל יחד להמשיך לשרת את אזרחי ישראל.
Ever heard of a community hospital? Well, joining us now is Professor Gael Strauss, the director of the psychiatry department at Mayeni Yeshua, a growing medical center here in Israel, and he has all of the details. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good to be here.
So let's start out with the idea of a community hospital. What is a community hospital, and what makes it different from a regular hospital per se?
A community hospital is different from a regular hospital and from the perspective that it is set up in order to address the needs of the community. So it's not so much an academic hospital that's set up to say to the community, we exist with these treatments and managements and come to us for service. Rather, a community-based hospital, the outlook, the approach is looking into the community, seeing what the needs of the community are, and therefore adjusting the services that the hospital provides in terms of what the community needs. Very
interesting. So let's talk a little bit about your hospital specifically and how it was started. What kind of needs was your hospital intending on addressing when it was started?
The hospital was set up in 1991 by Dr. Moshe Rothschild, who saw a need for obstetrics in the community. In Bnei Brak, there were families with many children, and there wasn't any kind of service addressing this. So they set up this hospital with an obstetrics department. And month after month, they started adding extra services in terms of what the community needed. As of today, there are 18 departments with 45 specialist outpatient clinics addressing the specific needs of what the community needs. My particular department was the latest department, in fact, a 7-story building. It's a little bit more than just a department. Setting up in terms of addressing the needs of the mental health. Now, in the community of Bnei Brak, which is an ultra-Orthodox community, the very fact that there exists in the center of Bnei Brak a self-standing building to manage mental health needs is a paradigm shift in the community.
Very interesting. So previously, the members of this community were going to other parts of Tel Aviv to seek health care, but now because you're essentially providing so many of the needs of this community, you're busy. I mean, this has been a very successful venture for you guys so far. And the psychiatry department in specific has a very innovative method of care, right, that goes beyond just the patient. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's exactly interesting, as you mentioned, the point that here, in fact, people were not getting treatment because of the stigma of mental health within the ultra-Orthodox community and the Orthodox community in general. Patients were not getting help.
Well, what is that stigma? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the stigma of mental health in terms of people not going out and getting treatment is because mental illness is considered to be a stain on people in particular because of the major emphasis that are placed in matchmaking, shidduchim. And therefore, people were not getting treatment. So they were either paying privately and paying lots of money for services that were provided by the Ministry of Health because they didn't want it to be recorded anywhere, or they weren't getting treatment at all. So we come along and we say, no, there's nothing to be ashamed of, and we want to be the voice of these patients. So we set up this building. We have outpatients, day program, and inpatient. And it's a paradigm shift, not just in the fact that we exist giving these services, but it's the first comprehensive psychiatry service in the country where everything is voluntary. We have no coercion. Patients themselves decide on admission. Patients themselves decide where they want to get treatment. We have an infrastructure where there's no restraints. So patients come into hospital. We not only do we not do any restraint, but we don't even have the infrastructure for that. We do not believe in that. The rooms are always open. We have infrastructure and conditions for patients at 5-story. That's part of the concept of parity. Just so someone who breaks their leg gets treatment, there's no reason why someone who has manic depression or depression shouldn't get treatment.
Well, this is really interesting to hear about, and I think we could have a much longer interview just about the stigmas within the community and how you're addressing that. But thank you so much for coming in, Professor Strauss, and telling us about this community health center. It looks like Israel might need a couple more, right? That's a hope down the line. Thank you so much for coming in. Now, here is a refreshing yet shocking first. A young Jewish woman who is currently studying in Israel is now competing to be Miss Germany. And organizers say she is the first Jewish woman to get this far in the competition. Talk about an unusual achievement. Tamar Morali is just 21 years old, but she's already on her way towards changing history. She was born in the German city of Karlsruhe, but grew up in Vienna, Austria, where she has long been active in the Jewish community. When she decided to compete for the Miss Germany title so that she could represent the country in the Miss Universe pageant, organizers were initially curious about her Jewish background, but she says the reactions have been positive. The beauty queen hopeful says she is a proud German Jew, and she wants the world to know that despite the country's, quote, dark past, the Jewish community is thriving there today. She says that if she were to become Miss Germany, her achievement would also be one for the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Today, the German people will be casting their votes online to decide whether or not Morali will be competing in the Miss Germany finale. Morali is currently pursuing her BA in Communications and Business at Israel's IDC Herzliya University. All right, well, it looks like dogs were more than just man's best friend. In ancient Israel, some incredible rock art has just been discovered in Saudi Arabia, revealing what appears to be Israel's national breed, the Canaan dog. And even though Israel and Saudi Arabia don't have formal diplomatic relations today, there was evidently an open border policy for the furry friends 9,000 years ago. Hundreds of massive petroglyphs have been found on huge rocks in Saudi Arabia's Shuamis and Juba regions. The rock drawings reveal the earliest depictions of dogs in archaeological record. The leashed canines are taking part in vivid hunting scenes, and archaeologists believe they were actually trained to run down prey for their owners. The earliest images of dogs to have been uncovered before this discovery dates back to 6000 BCE. But what's new about the latest Saudi scenes is that the dogs appear to be leashed to their owners' waists, leaving the hunters' hands free for bows and arrows. Today, there are only about 2,000 to 5,000 purebred Canaan dogs in the world, and around 1,000 of them live here in Israel. But if you're interested in getting a Canaan of your own, just head to a local shelter in the Holy Land, because the majority of the dogs are mixed with the breed. All right, now get this. For the first time ever, Israel has just launched a cutting-edge space lab into orbit around planet Earth. Now, what makes this even more incredible is that there aren't any humans aboard. Instead, the entire system is being run remote by scientists that are here on the ground. Now, this exciting launch brings 4 science experiments into space, including one from Israel, one from Switzerland, and 2 from the US, all using live biological cells. These are the first experiments ever of their kind done in outer space. Now, revolutionary technology developed by Israel's space pharma company keeps the cells at a regular temperature and allows scientists 24-hour-a-day access to completely control the whole thing from Earth. The lab has now safely docked with the International Space Station, which means that soon scientists all over the Earth might be able to run their own space experiments too. That's what Space Farm is hoping to offer now that Israel's first space lab is up and running in space, the final frontier. Our next guests today are yet another example of amazing Israeli startup ingenuity. Joining us with their story are Matan Perltman and Ran Harel, the co-CEOs of R&M. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
So first of all, what does R&M do?
All right, so we started about 6 years ago. We were both 2 young friends who had some saving from the army. We both had a longer military service. Matan was in the Navy SEALs and I was an intelligence officer.
Okay.
So we had some savings and we didn't want to lose it. So we decided to invest it. And we didn't know anything about the real estate market in Israel. So we decided to look into it.
Okay.
And eventually we found out that the best investment in Israel was in Beersheba.
Beersheba. So for those of our viewers who do not know where this city is, I guess we can say Beersheba is a city. It's in the Negev, the Israeli Negev, the Israeli desert. So obviously there aren't as many people who are trying to move out to the Israeli desert, but why did you decide to focus on that market?
Actually, the reason that we were attracted to Beersheba was the fact that Beersheba is under substantial development process.
Yeah.
Actually, the main issue is, first of all, the bases. And we have
the army bases, the military bases are.
We have military bases which are relocating from the center of Israel to the south by the government resolution. And the more important things about these bases, the relocation, is the fact that the intelligence corps and the CI4 corps, the communication corps, are moving to Beersheba.
Right, because it's just a lot easier instead of having to travel all the time back to the center of the country when you're working on one of these bases.
Yes, and we're talking about tens of thousands of probably the most brilliant minds of Israel. relocating
right, so
to
that's where you
Beersheba.
want to be. That's essentially where you want to be. So tell us, you know, I understand that you're now managing hundreds of properties. That's not, and you started out with a single property. How did that happen?
It's happening very slowly, actually. We started from our own, and we bought, and we did flip. We bought, renovate, and then sell, and we do it one after one. And then our family and friends come to us and say, oh, how we do it? Please help us. And that's what happens. And
so now you're managing hundreds of properties, which is a very big deal. Now, what is next for the company? Are you going to stay focused in Beersheba? You know, and if people want to invest, do you think that's where they should be looking?
yes, today we're managing in Beersheba 200 properties. And yes, it's a great place. It's going to be also in 5 years and 7 years from now. And we also invest in the US, in Chicago and Florida.
Interesting.
And manage there like 100 properties either. And we believe it's not matter how much people invest. We need every people do the best thing for him is not to put his money on the bank, just to invest it.
Yeah.
And I think we are the others.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for coming in
Thank
and
you very
enlightening
much.
our audience about this city called Beersheba that not many people know much about, but is clearly going to be booming soon.
Only 1 hour from Tel Aviv?
Only 1 hour from Tel Aviv. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hebrew Hammer is back. The Jewish private eye featured in the hit 2003 comedy film The Hebrew Hammer is making a comeback, and he's taking on the mother of all anti-Semites in a new sequel titled The Hebrew Hammer versus Hitler. The original Hebrew Hammer film received raves at the 2003 Sundance Film Festival and went on to be a cult classic. The sequel will recapture the energy of the original, which satirized every single Jewish American stereotype you can imagine. But this time, the Hammer is coming out of retirement to go back in time and go head-to-head with Hitler. The filmmakers, including Jewish American star Adam Goldberg, have taken to social media to raise funds for the sequel, already crowdsourcing over $100,000 to get the film off of the ground. This new adventure is a direct response to reports of rising anti-Semitism across the United States. But it looks like the world's favorite circumcised PI is coming back to make America kosher again. Now, this is an inspiring story. An Orthodox fashion designer was devastated by the sudden death of her husband earlier this month and nearly had to shut down her business. That is until her Instagram followers pitched in and helped raise over $1 million. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with more details.
Yes, well, I'll give you all some background information. First, Simi Polonsky and her sister founded a modest chic fashion label called The Frock NYC back in 2010 in an attempt to show people around the world that religious and more modestly dressed women can be fashionable as well. On November 9th, unfortunately, Simi lost her husband, Shua, from a condition he had only contracted about a week prior. And she has written openly about her struggles to her followers, people that, you know, follow her on Instagram, on social media. She's a mother of 2, and according to her page, is pregnant with her 3rd baby just weeks following his passing.
That's terrible. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine the kind of stress that she's under. You have your husband pass away, another child on the way, this business, a lot.
Exactly, yes. Well, a fundraising campaign opened up to help support Simi and her family, and with nearly 9,000 donations from social media followers, fellow Orthodox community members, just friendly people around the world who are, you know, feel her pain and are trying to help. The site raised over $1 million already. Wow. It's actually crazy. I went in to check out the site and to see the actual donations each person made. You can write your own comment. You have people that are donating $4,000 at one time. You know, people really want to help out. They want to make this transition for her easier. They understand the situation. Of course, there was nothing anybody could do at the time to prevent it, but yes, it's nice to see the community coming together.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Thanks.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say if you don't succeed at first, you should get a bigger hammer. So today's word is patish, which means hammer in Hebrew. Now, to the person who only has a patish, almost everything begins to look like a nail. Here's the thing though, no matter how big a patish you use, you can't usually knock common sense into people who just don't have it. So even if you feel like some people just need a sympathetic pat on the head with a hammer, keep your patish to yourself and move on. It can be saved for much greater projects. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a slight rise in temperatures and a low of about 56 or 13 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow is also expected to be partly cloudy, but with a chance for rain and a high of 69 or 21 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.51 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.